Well, hey guys, welcome to, what is it, week 2 of social distancing, I think?
No.
Is it week 2?
No,
No?
it's week 49.
It does feel like week 49. I think it's week 2 of social distancing.
It is.
Week 1 actually is officially over, tomorrow. Although it feels like it's been a full year and a half.
Yes.
I mean, it seems to be taking forever. You can tell that we have attempted to do our social distancing. They say it's, an arm's length. That's about all I can tell. He smells bad.
What?
No,
Coffee breath, maybe.
it happens. But it feels like it's taking a long time. I don't know if you've had this challenge or not, but my wife and I, we recognized that there was probably going to be some social distancing, some lockdown stuff heading our way. So we tried to prepare. You're right. We tried to set up things for our son to be able to do, things we could do together as a family. We did our best to try and make sure we had enough things to kind of keep ourselves entertained.
You went so far as to put on a Hulk mask.
I did go so far as to put on a Hulk mask.
That was awesome.
It was great. So we tried to prepare, right?
Yeah.
We tried to prepare for several days. But our 30 days of preparation lasted 2 days. 2 days, and then we were at the point of, all right, now what are we supposed to do? In fact, my wife told me to come to work, to come here to the office because I just needed to get out of the house, go away and leave.
She needed her space.
She needed her space.
More than an arm's length.
Way more than arm's length. I was driving her batty, driving her completely crazy.
See, it's different for us because we've just moved into the house. And so there's a whole lot to do, but now we can't necessarily get the experts to come in to help us. So I have taken up plumbing.
Yeah, I remember you came in with purple hands.
Purple hands.
Purple hands.
Because apparently, when you do the PVC, you've got the purple stuff that cleans the inside, and then you got the glue. Well, I didn't know how to go about it, and so I ended up with the purple stuff all over my hands. Apparently toxic. So if I pass out during this thing, you'll know it's probably because of the purple stuff.
You know that on the back it says, do not allow contact with skin, right?
I didn't read that.
Well, I guess, that explains a lot. Oh my. Well, if you're like us, you got to be getting to the point where you're kind of like, what in the world am I supposed to do now? In fact, some of us are eating a lot because we have nothing else to do. I've eaten way more honey buns in the last couple days. Yeah, trying to suck it in to avoid some of the weight that I'm bound to gain. Just because we don't have anything to do. If you're like us, you're probably to the point of, well, what do I do now? I'm reminded of Christ's command to love thy neighbor, to love your neighbor, and that what we should do now, what we can be doing now, is to love our neighbor. One of the primary passages of Scripture that is referenced, one of the primary ideas that is referenced when we talk about the idea of loving your neighbor is the Good Samaritan. You got those different characters there. And as I was considering that passage, I couldn't help but notice some of the similarities between what takes place in that parable and what's taking place today.
Yeah.
You got the 3 characters who come into contact with the wounded Samaritan there, and you got the wounded Samaritan himself. You have 4 different characters. I'm reminded of how our neighbors, the people who are around us, the people who we love, some of them are similar to that Samaritan in that they're facing challenges that are going on today. Whether it be that they're facing financial struggles because people have lost their jobs, and some people have received a giant pay cut. I heard the other day that if you're working for GM or Ford, even if you're working, you still got like a 20-25% pay cut.
Wow.
Some people are struggling in terms of food, especially now that they've found out that this whole lockdown process is probably going to last a little bit longer.
Some are sick.
Some are in fact sick, and they may not even have the coronavirus. They may just be sick in general.
Yep.
The question we have to answer is which of the 3 characters interacting with the Samaritan do we represent? Which of those 3 characters are we?
Yeah.
Do we find ourselves like one of the first 2, the Levite or the priest, who just kind of take a wide berth? I've wondered, why is it that they took that wide berth?
Yeah.
I've heard several different ideas. What are some of the theories as to why people did that?
Fear, of course, is the first thought, is that they were just simply afraid. Maybe the robber's still lurking, right?
Yeah.
So the fear, or the fear of actually, touching the guy and getting close to him, the unclean
Right.
thought of the priests, right? They're supposed to stay away from certain things like that. So there's a couple.
Some people can relate to that. Have you coughed in public yet and seen everybody turn and look at you?
Yeah, unclean. As a matter of fact, that's kind of it's a silly thing, and it's not really necessarily the right thing to say at this time, but in my household, every once in a while, we walk through and we say, unclean, unclean, and that's, prevalent today. But we had mentioned this, we talked about this a little bit earlier today. We need to be careful,
Yeah.
because there's a difference between staying safe with the physical distance, which is necessary, right? I mean, that's a smart thing to do, the contagious aspect of it, I get it, and it's smart, and it's protecting people. We're doing it for a good reason. The physical distance, but I have an issue with the phrase social distancing.
Yeah, it almost makes it sound a little bit like not only should I be physically separated from you, but that separation should exist beyond just our distance.
That's right. It carries over into this idea of not only am I afraid of getting close to you physically, but almost in a sense, I question who you are and what's going on with you. Kind of like the priest and Levite going by, well, what's going on with him? Man, I'm afraid. I don't want to get close. I don't want to touch. I don't know what the situation is. And so there's more than just a physical distancing for a protective purpose. There's now another layer that goes on in a relational sense.
Yeah.
And I'm concerned that social distancing may take on a whole new thing that keeps us from doing what we're talking about here. And that is, man, we need to love our neighbor.
Yeah.
We need to think about what's going on in their life and not be socially distanced from them. I understand the physical, but man, there's so many things we can do when it comes to the social.
Yeah, I don't know if you've been in the same boat. I've caught myself thinking that already. I wonder what this person has. Wonder where they've been. Wonder what they've touched. Wonder if they're okay. And if we're not careful, that it can extend not only to the people we don't know. It can even extend to the people that we know.
Yeah.
That as we interact, that we can be wondering, is it okay to be close together?
Yeah.
So we're going to have to be intentional with the idea of love thy neighbor.
Yeah.
The reason why we are physical distancing is because we care about one another.
We do.
Even if you don't think that the virus is that big of a deal, which some of you do, even if you don't think it's that big of a deal, it's still important to consider the fear that other people have and choose to distance ourselves just so that we communicate, I care about you and
That's
I
right.
love you. So if for no other reason, we distance because of that.
Right.
And we love our neighbor in choosing to have that distance.
That's right.
We were talking today about the idea of making phone calls and checking in on people, not just to say hi, but
Right.
actually identifying who are the at-risk people that are near us, like the elderly. Most people didn't plan to have extra time tacked on to our social distancing, even those of you who planned for a month. Well, we just got a couple more weeks tacked on. Chances are people are going to start running out of food.
Yeah.
So maybe one of the solutions is calling and asking, hey, can I go to the grocery store for you? Be wise as you go about doing it, but that would be one way.
Yeah, and I think when we were getting ready to do this video, we were talking about certain how-to things, certain areas that we could really focus on to apply this love thy neighbor, to keep that social, or to keep the physical distance, but to make sure that we don't distance ourselves socially. So the first is reminding you guys, make those phone calls, check in with the people, check in with the elderly, see if they're doing all right. And then be courageous enough to put together a good plan to maybe pick up some medications for them, right? Or to go pick up some food for them in a socially responsible way, in a physically responsible way. But there are some things that you had mentioned here that I think that are important areas that we should address on the how to love thy neighbor. First is reaching out, connecting with them. What's another one?
Well, another one would be the idea of setting some stuff aside. We're not out of the woods yet. And the reality is, when we come out of this, which inevitably we will, we've talked about the transformations and things that can come about, inevitably we'll come out of this.
Yep.
But there are going to be people around you who are hurting. There are going to be people around you over the next couple of weeks who are hurting, especially when it comes to food. One of the ways that you can help right now, not only in the midst of everything, but to plan for that coming out, set aside just a little bit. Maybe 1-2 cans of food. When you go to the grocery store, grab an extra can or two. I know you really want to call this
Pack-a-sack.
Pack-a-sack. We are not calling this pack-a-sack.
We just called it pack-a-sack.
No, we were saying we're not calling it.
We're not?
We're not calling it pack-a-sack.
Hashtag pack-a-sack.
That's not going to catch on. Please don't let that catch on. But
in all seriousness,
yeah,
when you go shopping, because you will and you're capable of doing so, pick up some extra canned goods and put them in a sack or a bag and set them aside so that when you hear word of somebody in need, you'll be prepared to meet that need.
Or if you're a baker, some of you are spending most of your time cooking. Cook just a little bit extra. If you're a deer hunter and you've got some extra deer meat and you know how to make jerky, make some jerky. Not only does it give you something to do, but you can actively be helping to prepare not only yourself, but us as a congregation to address some needs that are going to emerge, especially the longer we're in this.
That's right.
And if you choose to set it aside now, it doesn't have to be a lot, just a little bit here, a little bit there, and you might be amazed just how much you'll be able to help people in the future.
Yeah.
All of us who are watching this video are at least aware of social media. Mm-hmm. Social media, it can be great at this point in time. It can really help us to interact. It can help us to maintain some level of connectivity in the midst of the craziness and disconnectedness. But it can be the worst thing that we can use as well.
How so?
Well, for some of us, we're jumping in with our political opinions. We're expressing negativity, how much we disagree with a decision that has been made, how much we disagree or how much we think a idea is ludicrous. I don't know how helpful that is at this moment in time. With all the negativity, with all of the stress that people are under, social media can be great in that it provides us the opportunity to be uplifting, provides us to be connected, but when we use it in a way that attacks, when we use it in a way that spreads negativity, I don't know how helpful that is from a human standpoint, and I'm fairly certain it doesn't help us to represent Christ.
There is a time and place for discussion, for
Absolutely.
debate, for ideas to be tossed around. That's how we grow as a people, right?
Absolutely, without a doubt.
This doesn't seem to be one of those times.
One would question.
So I think it's important for us to focus on the positivity and really focusing on the uniting things. And I had mentioned earlier, we had talked about this a little earlier, that we know the world around us is crazy, right? We know that people have made poor decisions and there are consequences to those decisions that we're all facing. We know in political situations, social situations, national situations, that people have made some really poor choices that we are now facing the consequences in the midst of. We get that. And I talked about Joshua in Joshua chapters 23 and 24, where he's making that final speech, or those two final speeches, and he's talking to the people, and he's warning them about all these things that can go on. If you get connected wrong socially, if you do things wrong politically, if you do things wrong religiously, there are going to be these consequences that are just terrible, terrible, terrible for society and for God's people. But then he finishes in verse 15 to chapter 24, but as for me and my house,
we will serve the Lord.
That's right. So here, let's hunker down and go, you know what? Our household, we're going to serve Jesus right now. And we can't do anything necessarily that's going to be far-reaching when it comes to debate and pointing out faults. What we need to do right now is to point out faith and to point out the positive and to point out the things that Jesus is doing. And that he is the great physician. He is the great healer. He is the great uniter. His love brings people together. He loves, let's see, how many people does he love?
I think it's everybody.
Oh, that's right. Love thy
neighbor.
That's right. As Jesus does. Yeah. And so it's important for us to take that aspect of it and be that light in this midst of darkness. Be that positive voice and the uniting one. There'll be a time to talk about how things were handled. There'll be a time to talk about how things could be changed and made better. There's going to be a time for that. But right now, what our neighbors need to see and hear is how awesome Christ is, how united his people is, how supportive we are, and how we're trying to be the rejoice in the Lord always instead of the other aspect of it. Yeah. So we're not trying to to close people's voices. We're not trying to close people's opinions. We're not trying to do that. We're just saying that the timing is important, and the timing right now is to shine the light. To shine the light on the goodness of Christ and the loving and the caring and the serving and the giving to neighbors and caring for them.
I agree.
Yeah.
There's one other aspect that I think we have to mention.
Yeah.
In order to love thy neighbor, you kind of got to look after yourself a little bit too. Now, we don't mean in a selfish way, no. But we have to tend to our own needs. I suspect that there are some of you who already are experiencing a level of anxiety and perhaps even a level of depression throughout this whole chaotic time. If you're experiencing those, so if you're experiencing things like being tired, you're just kind of
lethargic. Yeah.
If you find yourself being lethargic, if you find yourself feeling helpless or hopeless, that the world is just kind of dark, if you feel a level of anxiety and pent-upness, if you find yourself perhaps having an extra level of aggression than normal, give us a call. Call me, call Tad, call Chuck, call Tom, call the elders, and let us know that something's going on.
Right.
And let's talk through that a little bit.
Yeah.
Because you can't take care of others if you haven't also addressed the things that are in you. Because you can't pour out that which you don't have in.
That's right. Yeah. And it's a real thing, right? I mean, depression is a real thing, and it doesn't mean that you're clinically depressed and it's going to be something that you have to be, you're going to live with for the rest of your life. It doesn't have to get anywhere near that level. However, depression starts somewhere, right? Darkness starts somewhere. Shutting things down starts somewhere. And it's best to catch it early.
Yes.
It's best to catch it before it picks up that momentum in your life. And so if you're starting to sense that you're waking up not sensing a purpose, if you're waking up in the morning and you're thinking, well, here's another day that I'm just going to kind of exist, then it's important to maybe reach out and start talking to somebody about it and start working through that idea that you wake up every day. I'm going to write a little bit more about this week, that you're going to wake up every day with a purpose. And when you do, it changes the perspective that you have on life. And it fends off that darkness and depression that can come on in. Absolutely. But if you're starting to experience some of that, we have connections in this congregation. We've got people here that are willing to sit down and chat with you through the phone, FaceTime, to help you through some of these darker times that you may be starting to experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You and I, we are the hands of God, the hands of Christ. He has entrusted His gospel to you and to me. And part of the way that we act as His hands is by choosing to love our neighbor, by choosing to take care of them, and as well as choosing to take care of ourselves so that we can be those hands.
That's right. And so what's the list? Start off remembering to call and to reach out.
Yeah.
Well, the second one was?
Second one is set some stuff aside.
No, that's not what we called it.
Yes, that's exactly what we called it.
We called it Pakistan.
No, we did not. Set some stuff aside so that you can take care of the needs that are coming.
Yep.
Choose to utilize social media in a way that uplifts. Yeah, there's a time to engage in discussion. That's probably not this time. Instead, choose to be uplifting. And then, if you got something going on, make sure to talk about it. Make sure to communicate with somebody who you trust. You're welcome to call one of us if you want to.
That's right.
And let's work through that together.
Amen.
You are the hands of God. Choose to use those hands in a way that brings Him glory and brings Him honor.
Love your neighbor.
Love your neighbor. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May His face shine upon you and give you strength in the midst